Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Hello.
Welcome back to the podcast. It is Season 5, Episode 18. We're talking Week 2, Steelers versus Broncos. The two of these teams played on Monday Night Football last week. The Steelers had the early game, and the Broncos had the later game. So let's just jump right into it. We already talked about the injury report on our last podcast, which we posted earlier tonight because we had to record these back-to-back. So nothing has changed since we last recorded, so if you want any information about that, you can listen to that episode. So let's jump right into the preview of this game. Let's get right into it, unless if there's something you want to talk about, which, you can feel free to butt in. But I think we can get right into talking about this game. And I think the big storyline to talk about first is the situation at running back for the Steelers. We talked a little bit about this off air, about James Conner versus Benny Snell. And the stat I wanted to throw out was the fact that James Conner has either missed an entire game or has left partway through the game in 17 of the last 21 Steelers games. So to me, that's just unacceptable. And even if he can play with this ankle injury, I think Benny Snell, based on his performance last week, should be the top running back going into this game against the Broncos. Meanwhile, I'd like to think that Conner can still carry the load. It's just that this is more of a what have you done for me lately. And as far as I'm concerned, I think James Conner should take a back seat here.
At the very least, Benny Snell has definitely earned himself more reps. That's how I view it. I would personally, based on Benny Snell's performance, hold Conner out the week. I would make him an inactive just to let him get healthy and then see what's going on. But if he does play, which it's likely, he has a sprain, but he practiced in full on Thursday. I just think that Snell should be getting the workload. You should be letting Conner get healthy, and going forward, you should judge it from there. Because I think Snell, even before Conner got hurt, I was live tweeting the game, right? And I was live tweeting that Snell had looked better than Conner, and Conner didn't look very good when he was in. And that's exactly what happened. Snell came in and looked fantastic, while Conner looked like he was struggling before the injury. So I think going forward, you should ride with the hot hand, and Snell has the hot hand. So that's how I view it.
Again, it's a what have you done for me lately? And obviously we want Conner to get back healthy, but I think that I agree with you. I think you need to do what's best for the team right now, and I think that is Benny Snell. And that's not to say James Conner can't come back in a week and play better and maybe stay healthy. I don't believe that that's as likely, but I still think that it's possible that he could either take back or at least could take a share back of his starting running back position. But first things first, he needs to get healthy.
Yeah, it might even be helpful for him to take a backseat role. It might prevent so many injuries if he's not playing like every down, which he really wasn't, but if he's not the main back and doesn't get as many snaps, maybe he won't get hurt. That didn't prove true in his first season when he was a rookie, where he tore his MCL when he was behind Le'Veon Bell. I don't know, maybe it will be helpful. I'm not sure.
He was solid in his rookie year. It's just that MCL injury is, something you had to add to the laundry list, and then he was healthy for most of 2018, but he missed a handful of games at the end, and then last year was just one thing after another.
Oh, man, I can't even remember all the injuries last year. There were so many different ones for him. It felt like something new every game.
They really did. Let's move on. The Steelers had the 5th highest rate of motion pre-snap in the NFL in Week 1. That's after they've spent the last several years last. Did you think it helped? Did you notice? And do you think it will continue?
God, I loved it. I loved it so much. There's no reason not to use motion in today's NFL. It gives the offense cues, and I love it. And you could use trick plays and confuse the defense. Like the Steelers ran an end around with Deontay Johnson in the game. Like, they only did it once while they had him motioning a couple times they had Claypool motioning the same time, a couple times. And then the last play of the game, they actually handed off to Claypool on an end around, and it was just worked so perfectly and so nice. I just love the motioning. I think it's great. And the top 12 teams that used motions on the highest percentage of snaps all won. There's an obvious correlation. And again, for anyone that's not a math person, correlation does not necessarily mean causation, but that's a pretty strong correlation if the top 12 teams that used it all won their game. And the four teams afterwards didn't, but, like, come on. I hope they keep using motion. I love it. What do you think?
I definitely agree. I think there's very little to, like, against it. I mean, you don't need to do it every play. But it's such a little thing that it's so little that you're losing by doing it. You're losing, a few seconds? I mean, I just think that the benefits far outweigh the risks. And I don't know why it took so long to get it in there. But Matt Canada was big on it at Pitt. And it's clear that his his fingerprints are all over the offense when you see that there's more motion. And I liked what I saw.
It's you, man. It's turning over a new leaf.
The shuffling along the offensive line is continuing. David DeCastro and Stefan Wisniewski have not practiced yet and are likely to miss this upcoming game. That would force rookie fourth-round pick Kevin Dotson to start his first NFL game. How do you feel about that?
I feel good. If there was one rookie I felt the most comfortable with having to start in his rookie year, it was going to be Kevin Dotson, and that's over Chase Claypool. Like, I mean this coming out of the draft. Following training camp, it probably would have been Claypool with how heavily he was praised, but Kevin Dotson plays like a grown man, and we only got 6 snaps from him against the Giants, but one of those he ran power, and he did it great. So I'm very excited for Kevin Dotson. I'm excited to see what he is. I mean, I would have been a lot more scared if Von Miller was playing this game, but you're not going to have Von Miller in this game. So I feel pretty comfortable with him, and I feel comfortable with Chukwuma Okorafor. Because I remember on my birthday, Chukwuma Okorafor had to start. Was it 2 years ago or a year ago? It had to be 2. Had to be 2 years ago. The Steelers played the Broncos, and Chukwuma Okorafor fared pretty well against Von Miller. I think that Chukwuma Okorafor handled himself against the Von Miller-less Broncos. So I feel good about Kevin Dotson. I feel good about Chukwuma Okorafor. I like to think that he barely lost to Zach Banner on the right tackle job. I feel okay.
A big reason he lost was because he had that hamstring injury.
Too. That could have been a reason why.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Okorafor. I think that he is a similar type ability to Zach Banner. He's a better pass blocker than Banner is, but he's probably worse as a run blocker from everything I've heard. The bigger question to me lies at who's the swing tackle now, and Dotson. I'm not too worried about him. This is a guy that played 53 games in college at the Division I level. I know that it's not in the SEC, but frankly, I'd rather have a guy that was an All-American and started for the majority of 4 seasons in the college as opposed to a guy who was a stud SEC tackle for 13 games but was a backup for 3 years. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree. It was just his tape was incredible. I was so happy with getting him in the draft.
He feels like the next type of guy that's going to become a starter. Ramon Foster's too strong because he was undrafted, but a guy that could be a guard in this league for a long time. I feel good about him. And like you said, if there was one rookie in this year, given the lack of playing time, that you feel like could make the easiest transition, it would be him.
Yeah.
Ben Roethlisberger did make it through Week 1 unscathed. He said that he felt sore pretty much everywhere besides his elbow. How confident are you that he can keep this up?
I feel good. I mean, it's going to be dependent on really how the offensive line plays with all the shuffling. But if they can play like maybe as good as they did or maybe a little bit better, because in the beginning of the Giants game is a little bit tough. They were having a little bit of a tough time, but I think he'll be okay. I mean, he's always had his bumps and bruises. Last year was like the first year where I was like, damn, this isn't just a bump and bruise, like it's actually over. I feel good. He says he feels good, and I trust that. He says his arm feels as best as it's ever been. I'm going to believe him, and I think that he's going to be okay. What do you think?
I'm kind of thinking that what he said was almost something that works as like a motivating tool. When he said that he hurts everywhere besides his arm, I think that's him kind of trying to tell his offensive line that they can do even better, because they could have used some work and they could have been better last week. So I think that's kind of interesting. But as long as the snap to throw remains relatively low, I'll feel better about it. You want to minimize how often he's getting hit point blank. The Steelers held one of the best backs in Saquon Barkley in the league in check last weekend. Can they slow down and stop this young core of Broncos skill position players? Now, I know Phillip Lindsay is injured, but they still have Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman behind them, or in the back there. They have Drew Lock, the young quarterback, who I know you weren't very high on. I'll be curious to get your thoughts on him and how he's developed through his first 6-7 games. There's also the bevy of young skill position receivers, whether it's Noah Fant, tight end. There's Albert O, who is a healthy scratch, but he's there too. They've got guys like Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton. There's a bunch of young skill position players, and I wanted to know what you thought about all of them.
So the Broncos have the youngest offense in the NFL on average. I think they're averaging 25. I was watching the Tennessee Titans game, their game on Monday after the Steelers, and I'm pretty sure that's what they said. There was 20. Their average is 25, and overall, I like a lot of their pieces. I don't know what to think about Drew Lock quite yet. I was at the end of last season. I was feeling good. I was feeling like he was outperforming what I thought he was going to be because I compared him to Blake Bortles. He reminded me a lot of Blake Bortles. Another one of my friends said Jay Cutler. And like that's what it felt like he was going to be. And then at the end of last season, he kind of flashed a little bit and stuff. But the Titans game was rough. He was down Cortland Sutton, so I'll give him that. But I felt like his line actually played really well. They weren't against the strongest pass rush, but I mean. I thought that he was protected, and he was still making some ill-advised throws. He was not helped. Jerry Jeudy, at times, Jerry Jeudy dropped 2 third-down passes, which is tough. I don't really know much about Jeudy. I saw his highlights and was unimpressed for a guy that was so good. And I always said I was going to go back and watch to see what I actually thought, and I never did. But other than that, Noah Fant impressed me last week. Noah Fant was a guy that I didn't like. Noah Fant was a guy he wasn't my prospect. He was your prospect. He was just a guy that I didn't think was going to work out. I thought his hands weren't very good, and I thought that it wasn't going to work. But, I mean, in the first game, he came in pretty strong, if I do say myself. He put up pretty big numbers for tight end. He was one of the top-performing tight ends of Week 1. So I'll give him that. I really loved bringing Albert O back with his former Mizzo quarterback and Drew Lock. I think that was amazing, but since he was inactive Week 1, I guess I don't know what to think. I would have thought Nick Vannett would have been inactive Week 1 in favor of Albert O, but guess not. They chose experience.
They're probably just going to bring him along slower.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because, I mean, Albert O is a little bit raw, especially for a tight end. Yeah, the other guys, Tim Patrick, I'm not a big fan of. Tyree Cleveland, I'm not a big fan of. Cortland Sutton, I am a big fan of, but he's got that AC joint sprain that I keep him out again. I'm not sure. He might be playing through it, but it's still tough, man. When you're a wide receiver, you're using your shoulder a fairly good amount. Just AC joint is a tough injury. It's one that lingers if you don't let it heal properly. So I like him, but I don't know if I like him playing injured with the AC joint. It'll be interesting if Hamler is able to make his debut too, because Hamler wasn't able to make his debut on Monday because of an injury, but he is good to go this week. So I don't know much about Hamler either, honestly. It was not a prospect I looked at all.
There's a lot of unproven commodities here, but there's a lot to like about all of them. I think we're just kind of waiting to see which guy establishes himself as the guy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The only guy that has established himself is Cortland Sutton, and Cortland Sutton is currently banged up. So it's who's going to step up for Cortland Sutton on the Denver Broncos?
This would be a good week as any for you to check out that Jerry Jeudy tape, and I wanted to go back to what you talked about with Noah Fant. Yeah, this guy had 2 major concerns from me coming out of the draft. Number one, you mentioned it, his hands. that's not something that's going to go away completely. He's going to have his drop issues, but number two was also his blocking. I haven't seen enough to know if he's gotten better in that area, but I thought he had a high ceiling if he reached his potential. In week one, he did. He was a big play guy. I don't know if he can keep that going, but by all accounts, week one was big for him. That offensive line is a group of guys, some proven commodities, not great but good players. Garrett Bowles, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dalton Reisner, Graham Glasgow, and they're headed up by former Steelers offensive line coach Mike Munchak. So that's something to consider and think about. Yeah, a lot of guys, Jerry Jeudy, we already talked about Freeman, Lindsey, Melvin Gordon's the elder statesman there, Drew Lock. I'm still not sure what to think about him. I like him, I don't love him yet, but the fact of the matter is he just has such a small sample size and I can't go off that yet.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's just he needs more time as a starter. I need to see him work with his full arsenal. Arsenal, I should say. I don't know why I said arsenal. Just combining words, but he hasn't had that full arsenal yet, and the ones he's had is he's probably not going to have it the entire year. Out Philip Lindsay going forward, and I don't know if Cortland Sutton's ever going to be healthy, but I just want to see him with Cortland Sutton is the main thing I want to see. Him, Cortland Sutton, and Melvin Gordon should be telling, because if his offensive line plays like he did, it's going to be easy to evaluate him because his offensive line was so good last year. Last game. I felt like I don't think the Titans have anywhere close to a good pass rush. I'm not a big fan of Jadeveon Clowney. Vic Beasley, I'm not a fan of either, and his storyline through the summer was really, really bizarre. But I still was impressed because Garrett Bowles is known to be like a holding guy, and he played with a sprained elbow and didn't have a hold in the game. He didn't have a penalty. So as far as I know, I might be forgetting one, but he played really well, and that impressed me. He wasn't supposed to be the starter this year. He was supposed to be Jawan James on that side. So it's going to be interesting going forward to see how Drew Lock plays when he gets more players back.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Let's move on. With the Broncos signing Anthony Chickillo to the roster, do you buy into this sort of take that the Broncos are trying to do all their scouting they can with Munchak, with Mark Barron, who's on the team now, and by signing Chickillo that they're trying to get as much info as they can, or do you think it's just a signing they felt like they had to make because someone like Chickillo is a good special teams player and they wanted inside linebacker depth with Mark Barron?
Yeah, I think they really needed both edge and inside linebacker. Anthony Chickillo could stick around for them. They had to elevate Tuska. Is that how you said? He was your prospect.
Derek Tuska, because of the Von Miller injury. And remember, Bradley Chubb is still on a pitch count right now.
Yeah, they had to elevate him. So it is possible. They might have chosen Anthony Chickillo specifically for this week. They might move on from him and take another edge rusher. For sure, they definitely need an edge rusher for their practice squad with the injuries they've had. They didn't have that many on their team. So I don't buy into the fact that they get all the scouting they need from Munchak. I forget who said it. I think it might have been Cameron Hayward. Cameron Hayward was talking about Munchak and saying there is no one that knows the defensive line what they're doing better than Munchak. Like if there's anyone that knows, it's going to be Munchak. So they were already good. I don't think Mark Barron's going to help much because he's there just basically to give them information as he's been injured and he's likely not playing this game. But I don't think that Chickillo and Mark Barron are going to give them any information that Munchak already didn't know,
Yep. Well, one position group for the Steelers that was really quiet was the tight ends. Eric Ebron had one catch. I don't think Vance McDonald had any, and he was the lowest.
Vance McDonald had one.
He did have one. He was the lowest graded PFF player for the Steelers offense. I remember that. So how do you think the tight ends factor in here?
It's a different team. The Giants have Blake Martinez. The Broncos have Dino Johnson or AJ Johnson. He's known as I keep saying Dino because in my head it's Dino. he is a really good player that's going to be covering the middle of the field. So I'm not sure. The tight ends really struggled in the middle of the field, I felt like, against the Giants with Blake Martinez. I think that could happen again here. They also have Josie Jewell, who is a very smart player. Not fast, but very, very smart with his play recognition and stuff. One of my old prospects a while ago, and he was one of my favorites, one of the ones I liked. So I don't think the tight ends are going to do better here. In fact, it could be even worse. It's kind of hard to get worse than 3 catches altogether or 2 catches altogether. But it's going to be. I think it's going to be tougher because I find that middle linebackers to be actually okay and with their coverage, and that's who's typically lined up against them, or the safeties, and they have Simmons and his name is. You know their other safety off the top of your head?
Bryce Callahan?
That's a cornerback.
Oh, you're talking safety? Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons are
There
their
we
guys.
go. Kareem Jackson. Yeah, Kareem Jackson I'm a fan of. He was on my fantasy team actually last year because I love Kareem Jackson. But yeah, it's going to be tough for the tight ends in this game. Tougher than, I think, the Giants game. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they battle through a tougher matchup on paper.
So who was that inside linebacker you mentioned? Because I'm looking at their names. I don't see Dino. I see an Alexander Johnson and AJ Johnson. Is that him?
His nickname's Dino.
Gotcha. How do you get that one? Do you know?
I don't know exactly, but he does a dinosaur celebration. Like he did it. I don't know. Did you watch the Titans game?
Not all of it. I fell asleep.
Okay, yeah. At some point, like he does a little T-Rex arms. He did it in the game. I think it's just a name he's earned. I'm not really quite sure where the origin of it is, but I love it. I call him. I always forget his actual name now.
AJ Johnson.
To me, he's just Dino or Dino. So that's how I've been calling it. But
so what do you think about Josie Jewell? Your old was he your prospect or mine? I feel like
he was mine.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought he was yours.
Yeah, when he came out, I was a fan of his because he didn't have the speed. He was, in fact, one of the slowest linebackers of the draft he came out of. But I loved his smarts. I loved his play recognition. I loved his tackling. So I was a fan of his. From my understanding, he's done okay in the NFL level. Not great, maybe at best okay, I should say, because he got benched. He had started last year, and then Dino came in and took over his job playing next to Todd Davis. Now with Todd Davis gone, Josie's gotten a spot now next to Dino. So I don't know. If off of one game, I'm not really sure how he's going to be. I thought he did okay in the Titans game. Going against Derrick Henry is always a tough one, and I thought that the Broncos as a whole handled Derrick Henry pretty well.
I did see one play where Jewell absolutely crushed Henry.
That is true. That one where he got into the backfield and just, like, you don't see Derrick Henry get knocked on his butt very often, but Josie Jewell did do that. He's got really good play rec. Like I said, he was able to shoot through and get to him. So yeah, I'm not sure off of one game how he's going to do for the year as like a full-time starter.
So as far as the rest of the defense is concerned, looking at the front here and the secondary, I actually think the secondary has the best group of guys, but it seems like AJ Boye separated his shoulder, right?
Yeah, he is on IR.
So that means Devontae Harris, Bryce Callahan, Duke Dawson Jr., who I don't even think is a cornerback, Isang Bassi, who was a cornerback I looked at. The safeties are the best. Wasn't Kareem Jackson a cornerback?
Kareem Jackson was a corner for the Texans, but he played safety in his last year with the Texans and then came to the Broncos as a safety.
Gotcha. So I think that's just something you need to be careful of. Remember, last time the Steelers played the Broncos, Ben Roethlisberger threw for 450 yards, but also tossed 2 interceptions. I think as long as you block Bradley Chubb and you make sure Jarrell Casey doesn't wreck things, Shelby Harris is a good defensive lineman too. There's some pieces here, but I'm not convinced this is a great cohesive unit.
Yeah, there's some impressive parts though. Isang Bassi actually came on and played pretty decently for the injured AJ Boye after he came on. And you know who was impressing me? The defensive back, Oja Medier. don't really know who he is. He might have been a rookie. I literally didn't know, but he was playing really, really well when he came on the field, that corner. So those are two guys to look out for. Basti was a guy that was connected to the Steelers a lot, not someone that we looked at.
Actually, yeah,
he was from Wake Forest.
I actually looked at him.
Oh wait, you did?
I'm pretty sure I did. I need to look back. That name sounds familiar.
I just think he was linked to the Steelers a lot. I really don't think we looked at him. I could be wrong.
I definitely remember the name. That's for sure. I'm going to have to take a look here.
Now I gotta go see, because now I feel... Let's see. I already got it up.
Yep, I looked at him from Wake Forest.
Really? Okay, I didn't remember you looking at him.
Unfortunately, I remember almost nothing about my analysis of him.
Yeah, you said he was your favorite. Interesting.
Cannot remember for the life of me. I'm going to have to look back and see what I said at the time. Cornerback was early on. Yeah, episode 3. All right, let me take a quick look here.
Yeah.
So what do you think the Steelers should do when they go into this game? You want to see a game plan similar to what we saw from the Steelers against the Giants?
No, I felt like part of the reason Ben struggled, the scripted plays weren't very good going into the Giants game. None of them were really working. You saw the offense start to get going after the scripted plays ended. They need a better game plan. And what I think is they should attack the edges, because where I worry the most with the Broncos is on the defense is the middle. Because they got Shelby Harris, which Shelby Harris picked off Ben Roethlisberger last time they played the Broncos. And what's it called? Then they got Dino and they got Josie Jewell down the middle. I think that rushing towards the edges where Bradley Chubb and I don't even know who their other edge rusher is, who their other outside linebacker is.
I think it's Malik Reed. I think.
You know better than I. I literally, so we have a Broncos fan friend, and he was telling me the names, and I was just, none of these names were sticking because they were, like, no names to me. Their defensive ends aren't very good. They're okay. Like, their names I don't really recognize. The outside linebackers, besides Bradley Chubb, on the other side, I don't know. I just think that that should be the game plan. Should be running to the edge and more end arounds, because I think that's going to test them the most. I think that's where the Broncos are the weakest. Because I still like a Bryce Callahan. I wasn't sure what to think of him with a year off. He seemed to be playing well. I do like Justin Simmons a lot. I actually love Justin Simmons. He's a great safety. And like I already said, I love Kareem Jackson as well. So throwing on them I don't think is a move, but running to the outsides I think is going to be great in this game.
So the other edge rushers besides Chubb are Jeremiah Atauchu and Malik Reed. So Atauchu had 29 snaps and pass rushes, while Chubb had 30 and Reed had 15. So that's the trio you're dealing with.
Yeah. I don't know how I forgot Atauchu. He came from the Chargers. But I kept being told that name. It just means nothing to me. Like, I'm like, just like no names in my head.
So they generated...
It's like...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was it. They generate what?
4 quarterback hurries, 3 hits, and 1 sack. The 3 of them did.
Combined?
Yeah, last week.
Yankees. It's not that good.
The sack isn't horrible, but only 3 hits is not a ton. The hurries may seem like a lot, but I don't think that's a ton. Chubb only had 2 hits in a hurry, so he was pretty quiet.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of. I know it's not fair because these guys are no names, but like I look at Watt and Dupree, and Watt had 7 pressures and Dupree had 8, all by themselves. So they had 15 together.
Yeah, it's just a different caliber here. So we think that the Steelers should be able to have the advantage over a young offense of the Denver Broncos, and they should be able to score against this Broncos defense.
I think so.
Go ahead.
I think their secondary is where their
strength is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. So, didn't turn the ball over. Ben Roethlisberger didn't in week 1. Just try to repeat that performance this week.
It'd be so fantastic if the Steelers could go a game without having a turnover. The streak is at something ridiculous. I've lost track. It's been so many games where the Steelers have had at least one turnover. And I mean, it wasn't on offense this past game, but it was just...
It still counts,
it'd be so nice. Yeah, it still counts. Like, it'd be so nice. I can't remember the last time we saw a game without a turnover from the Steelers. Sucks.
I am trying to find that out right now.
It's a long streak, man. I'm pretty sure it's going back to
I think it's
2017 season or 2016.
I think it's that Panthers game where we absolutely blew them out in 2018.
Possibly. That would make sense.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs threw an interception, so not the Raiders game. What do you think about... I'm worried about Deontay Spencer.
He did look pretty good returning, and I mean, I hate revenge games. Revenge games are like the worst for the player. Like, the Broncos versus Titans, Jarrell Casey played great for them that game, and I don't know if he'll put that up again, but I like to attribute that partially to, like, it's like a stat booster. When there's some, like, it's not bad blood. I don't know how it really ended with Deontay Spencer. He was able to find a job as soon as he got cut. But when a team cuts you, I feel like it makes you just want to prove them wrong. Like, why you made a mistake cutting me. So I don't like that. I could see Spencer returning one against the Steelers is what I'm trying to say.
I understand. Yeah, I'm definitely worried about it. So I hope the special teams gets things into gear here. All right. Any further thoughts on this game?
No, not really.
Alrighty. Let's move to our weekly pick'em section. We just talked about the Bengals and Browns in our last podcast, so that's all set. Let's talk about the rest of the slate of games to close out the show. So we have the Bengals and Bears. The Bears snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. The Giants are 0-1 after losing to the Steelers. The Bears, hosting, are getting 5.5 at home.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm going to pick the Bears to cover. I just think that Allen Robinson should be a mismatch against the Giants, and I'm going with that. Bears cover.
I agree with you. I'm going to take the Bears to cover. Even though they haven't been as good as they were a couple years ago, the Bears' front seven is still scary compared to that Giants' offensive line. And I think that's going to be a tough task for Daniel Jones to go in there and win. The Giants are just not a good team right now. So I'd like the Bears to cover 5.5. And we'll continue to move into the 1 o'clock games here. Falcons at Cowboys. This is a big game for two 0-1 teams. The Cowboys, we talked about their offensive line concerns. That's definitely something that's concerning me. Going into this game, the Cowboys are getting 4 points at home. Where do you stand here?
Oh, for me, I'm going to pick the Falcons plus the points. I think that the Falcons have the offense to keep up with the Cowboys' offense. Because, I mean, like I said, they threw for 450 yards against the Seahawks defense. And so I think they could keep up. And I wasn't overly impressed with the Cowboys, so I'm picking the Falcons plus the points.
I'm actually going to go the other direction. I'm going to pick the Cowboys. I think there is too much talent on this Cowboys offense for them to not be able to succeed. Even though their offensive line has been decimated, I'm not a huge believer in that Falcons defense. And I think that it's too important for the Cowboys to lose this game, so I'll take the Cowboys to cover that 4-point spread. Lions at Packers, a game between two teams that are historically on opposite directions. The Packers are getting 6.5 at home. A lot of home favorites this week. Where do you stand here?
So for me, I'm going to pick the Packers to cover after doubting them a lot and speaking down on them last week. I mean, I still picked them to cover last week, but I think that they're the better team than the Lions. It's looking like Kenny Galladay's not going to play again, so I'm going to pick the Packers to cover.
I agree with you. As long as Kenny Galladay is out, my thoughts on the Lions is that they can play with just about anybody, but without him, I'm not convinced that they can win. So I'll take the devil I know and the Green Bay Packers to cover. Jaguars versus the the Tennessee Titans. The Jaguars got off to a surprising 1-0 start while the Titans kind of slugged their way through their first win. This is a matchup that Derrick Henry seems to love for whatever reason, and the Titans are getting 7.5.
So for me, I was impressed with the Jaguars' win last week. I'm going to keep it up and pick the Jaguars plus 7.5. I feel like most division games are always played close, so I'm going to go with that in mind.
I'm going to take the Titans to cover. I feel like this is a game where Derrick Henry's going to go off, and the Jaguars just don't have enough answers for him. They keep the game short, and Gardner Minshew doesn't have a chance to continue to put up effective numbers and keep this game close. So I like the Titans to win relatively handily, so I'll lay the points. Vikings at Colts, 2 0-1 teams with a loss in week 1 that makes them look much worse than I think people thought they were. This is a game I would stay away from personally.
So for me, I like the Vikings plus 3. I think it's going to be a close game. I'm not sure who wins it. Like you said, this is a game I agree with you. I think I'd stay away from this game too because I could see either team winning it, but I'll go with the Vikings plus 3.
The Vikings secondary has just been decimated though, and not necessarily due to injuries. They just lost all their good players.
Yeah, they have no corners. Their safeties, one of the best tandems in the league, just no corners.
Yeah, and I don't know. But the Colts, do I trust in Kirk Cousins or do I trust in a volatile Phillip Rivers? I don't know. I don't like it. I'm going to take the Vikings plus 3 too, but I don't like this at all. Bills versus Dolphins in Miami. The Dolphins are giving 6 points on the road here to what looks like to be a really good Bills team.
Yeah, I'm going to pick the Bills to cover. That being said, I just think they're a better team than the Dolphins.
I am actually going to take the Dolphins plus 6. I think they're going to play a better game this week than they did last week. And I don't know. I have a weird feeling about this game. The Bills rarely in my entire lifetime have been able to put together wins like this that are convincing. Usually they stumble a little bit, and I might be wrong for thinking it's this game, but this game I'm feeling a little different, so I'll take the Dolphins plus 6 in this one. An angry 49ers team that's 0-1 is going to New Jersey to take on the 0-1 Jets. Jets are giving 7 points here, but yeah, I have a hard time thinking that the Niners are going to lose this one.
This was tough for me. It doesn't sound tough, but just I really don't like Jimmy G. I really don't. I like his offense. It's hard for me to say that Jimmy Garoppolo is better than Mason Rudolph. It really is. I know I always get flack for that. And like last year, I kind of had to shut my mouth for the end because he made it to a Super Bowl, which plenty of bad quarterbacks have made it to a Super Bowl. But I just don't like him. He's very average, and I don't know. I feel like this could be such a low-scoring affair. Like, because the 49ers should smack the Jets. That's how I view it. The 49ers should just absolutely smack them. But I don't trust their offense to put up the points to smack them. Like, this could finish, like, 20-13, 20-14. I'm going to pick the 49ers to cover, but I'm weary. I really don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo at all.
Have you ever believed in him?
Oh, not a single... No.
I'm going to take... Go ahead.
Just average. He is like the quarterback play is average. I know like he doesn't have wide receivers. It's just I don't know, man. Like just like an overglorified Josh Allen. It's same thing.
I am gonna take the Niners to cover. Like you said, a lot of bad quarterbacks have made it to a Super Bowl, and the Super Bowl is playing against a team that's really good, like the Chiefs. And not the Jets, who I think might be the worst team in the league. So I think the Niners win by a bunch, even though they are traveling across the country. LA Rams traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. These are two teams that a week ago I'd have picked differently, but they're heading in opposite directions.
Yeah, give me the Rams +1. I think the Rams are going to win this game. I think that the Rams are going to play better than they did last week. it's going to be more reflective in the score because I felt like the Rams played a lot better than the score dictated. I think that's going to show up this week. The Aaron Donald going up against that line is really what sells it for me. I don't know what the Eagles are going to do against Aaron Donald, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, how do you even try to stop that?
I guess you don't. I guess you're just like, well, Carson Wentz, you're going to be running every single play. You're going to be running away from Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I like the Rams in this one +1. I think you covered it about as well as you could. So I'll take that. Rams +1. Panthers at Buccaneers, 2 0-1 teams. Tampa Bay's getting 8.5 though. Where are you feeling this?
Give me the Panthers +8.5. They impressed me. I'm going to throw them a bone, even though they probably shouldn't keep this close at all. The Bucs should blow them out.
How come?
The Bucs are a better team on paper.
No, I mean,
I
was going to say, how come you had the Panthers +8.5 even though?
I just have a feeling. I have a feeling, and I liked how the Panthers played last week.
I did too. I kind of got a funny little feeling about them, that they might be kind of like the Jaguars, where it's like they're better than I think people gave them credit for. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Buccaneers to cover.
I respect that. I mean, we both did the exact same thing. I said Panthers +8.5, and then the Bucs are going to blow them out. And then you're like, yeah, I have a feeling about the Panthers. And then Buccaneers are going to cover.
Yep. So I'll tell you what, now as we go into the 4 o'clock games, the Washington football team really impressed me last week with the way their defensive line played. And I know the Arizona Cardinals offensive line has been a bit suspect lately over the last few years, but even getting 6.5, I've got a hard time picking against what Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are building right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. Cardinals are going to cover. I went on a whole tirade last podcast about how I think Kyler Murray's the next MVP for this season, so I'm going to pick Cardinals to cover.
I agree with you. I think that the Cardinals are starting something pretty special, possibly. So I like what they did last week, and I think that they're going to continue it this week. Chiefs at Chargers. The Chiefs are getting 8.5 on the road. This will be the Chargers' first game in their new stadium. Did you get a chance to see like the stadium itself? It looks like it's huge.
It did. It was kind of impressive looking. It was really cool. Really cool stadium. Shame they couldn't cushion it with fans, but no.
That's Chargers tradition as we approach here.
It's true. Even if fans were allowed, they wouldn't have fans. So, that being said, the Chiefs are going to cover, I think, easily.
Yeah, I agree. I'm shocked that the line is not bigger because, I mean, the Chargers can't play from behind.
It must be because it's a division game. It's probably why.
All right. Ravens at Texans is the last late game on Sunday. The Ravens are getting 7 on the road.
I am going to pick the Ravens to cover. Last year they blew out the Texans with DeAndre Hopkins. Now the Texans are significantly worse, as we saw. I will take the Ravens to cover, and I will take them to cover by a lot as well.
I was trying to think about that. I had paused because I was trying to remember. I remembered they played last year, and I remembered it was a blowout. But I was like, I'm pretty sure it was the Ravens that won. And yeah, that's right. It was like 41-13 or something like that. Like it was bad.
It was something. It was supposed to be a close game, and it was something ridiculous. I'm going to pick the way better Ravens team this time around.
Yeah, even if the Ravens are due for regression, the Texans are already they made themselves a worse team. So how am I supposed to sit here and think that I can take the Texans, even though they're home after what happened last year and the fact that they aren't as good as they were last year? So yeah, Ravens cover, and that actually might be my pick, my lock of the week. To be honest with you,
it's fair. I could see that.
Patriots at Seahawks, a rematch of Super Bowl 49. Seattle's getting 3.5 at home. It's it's Patriots Seahawks, but it might seem like it's going to be an old Panthers versus Seahawks playoff game from back in the day because it's Cam Newton and Russell Wilson again.
Yeah, man, and this time I can't see Cam Newton sticking around. I don't think he could keep up with Russell Wilson, even if the defense he has is going to help him. I'm going to pick the Seahawks to cover.
I agree with you. I'm going to take the Seahawks to cover. I still haven't seen enough from this Patriots offense to know if they're legit or not, but I like the Seahawks in this one as well. Monday Night Football, we have the Saints, and speaking of christening their new stadium, it's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders at Allegiant Stadium. I'm very, very interested to see the inside of this place because I think it's going to be very cool.
It's probably going to be sick. It's one of the newer stadiums, like you said, brand new. Just going to be awesome. Hope to check it out one day.
So where you stand on this game?
I'm going to pick the Saints to cover. I don't know how I feel about the Raiders this season yet. I just think that the Saints are the better all-around team.
Maybe it's because I did some PFF preview work for the Raiders in week 1, but I've got a feeling that they're putting something together, not anything super special, but something that's worth noting. And I think the Saints, I still think they're the best team in their division. I don't think they're going to lose many games this year, but I just have the feeling the Raiders are going to have a certain kind of swagger this week with opening up their new stadium. So I like the Raiders to win this one, and I'll take them +6. So that wraps up our picks section. Let's move on into bold predictions, X Factors, and final scores. So X Factors, we already picked our guys, so Austin, go right ahead.
So on offense, I'm going to go with Deontay Johnson. I was thinking about who would have a matchup that's kind of a question mark, and I was going with him as like wide receiver 2 because I don't know who their quarterback 2 is. So I'm hoping Deontay Johnson can eat while Bryce Callahan has to stick with Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm expecting Deontay Johnson to go mostly against Oja Media. I am not 100% positive who is going to be on him. There might not be a guy obviously shadowing him. It might just end up where Johnson lines up. On defense, it's Steven Nelson. That one took longer. I couldn't figure out on defense who was going to be a difference maker. It's sort of the same thing. I was like, well, if Cortland Sutton is likely going to be with Joe Hayden, it's up to Steven Nelson to cover the number 2, and that's mostly Judy from what I'm expecting. So I'm putting on Steven Nelson to have a big game this week. And to go along with my 2 X Factors, I chose a bold prediction relating to both of them. And after not many turnovers last year, I'm picking Nelson to get 2 in this game. Then for Deontay Johnson, he's going to get 2 catches of 30 or more yards. Who are your X Factors and what are your bold predictions?
All right, so my X Factors are on offense. I'm going with a combination of Kevin Dotson and Chukwuma Okorafor, mostly because I don't know if Dotson is definitely playing yet or not. If he's not, I'll go with Okorafor. If not, I'll go with him, just because of the inexperience along the line if those 2 guys are playing. And especially if they are playing, they'll be both on the right side, so that'll be something to look out for. And them in protection and run blocking is going to be of paramount importance. On defense, I have Minkah Fitzpatrick, and this is not to say that he hasn't played well, because he has, and a lot of the reason why he hasn't been targeted lately is because teams just don't want to test him. But he also hasn't had a turnover, and this will be 7 games now since the midway point of last season. So he hasn't had a splash play in a little while. He's due for one, and I think he could have a couple in this game. So my bold predictions, I have the Steelers allowing 0 sacks, and the offensive line leads the way for 150 rushing yards, and Minkah Fitzpatrick forces 2 turnovers and scores a touchdown. Let's move on to the final score prediction here, Austin. Give me your final thoughts on Steelers and Broncos in Week 2. Steelers are getting 7.5. When you're done collecting your thoughts, tell me what you think is going to happen on Sunday.
So, I had this number come into my head. It's really weird. I don't really know where it came from, but I have the Steelers winning 39-17. 39 is not a normal football number, but there's something calling me about that number. So that's what I'm predicting for this game. I feel like the Steelers are going to win in blowout fashion, and it's going to look close score-wise somewhat by the end. Like, it might be 39-10. So that's what I'm predicting. How about you?
I have the Steelers winning by a much closer margin. I have the Broncos scoring 17 points as well, but I just have a feeling that the Steelers' offense might struggle to get the ball rolling on the ground. And I think it might be a little sticky when it comes to the way the offense plays with that talented secondary that the Broncos have. And the Steelers just don't seem to blow teams out a lot. And I think that even though Ben Roethlisberger played well last week, I think that it might be a bit of a rocky road here early on in the season. So I think that the Steelers will win, but I think that defensive touchdown that I'm predicting will be a big key difference in the game, and I think the Steelers will play better, but we'll need the big plays like that to be able to come out on top. And that pretty much wraps it up for me. Any final thoughts, Austin?
I don't think so.
Okay, then. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. If you have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Follow us on social media, on our Twitter page, on Instagram, and check out our Facebook page. And our episodes are posted on SoundCloud and YouTube, so be sure to check that out as well. Austin, thank you for doing these episodes with me tonight. I appreciate it, and thank you for listening, as always, to our listeners. You know, we always appreciate you, and looking forward to week 2 of the NFL season, Austin. Can't wait.
Me neither, man. Me neither.
All right, until next time, thank you for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
Bye.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.